Good afternoon. Privileged to be here. I thank GFA for the very challenging task of wrapping up in a few minutes what we have been learning today, what we've been discussing in this journey so far. My name is Mauro. I'm responsible for sustainability in EURATEX, the European Textile and Apparel Industry Confederation in Brussels. And we represent the industry which makes textile and fashion products, which is what we've been hearing the whole day. We've been hearing about fashion industry, textile materials being transformed, and we've been hearing how this world is so important in the policy agenda and how this policy agenda can be also supported by the business. It's part of the conversation we've been going through today. As Jona said at the very beginning, this conversation is very necessary because it's now the time to speak up and discuss about what the industry can, how the industry can help these transitions. So let me try to get to wrap up a few key messages from the 5 different priorities that we have been looking at today, the priorities of the CEO Fashion Agenda. We started with the first priority, respectful and secure work environment. We had insight of what a large part of the business is doing. We had key messages from the European Commission saying mandatory legislation, due diligence legislation is coming. And is going to look also what the business practices are. And there we have 2 words that caught my attention. One is astonishment and one is alignment. Astonishment for all the different initiatives which are taking place all over, and the need to bring this together under a common framework. That was not the only moment in the discussion today that we heard about call for alignment. The policymakers will decide the duty, the enforcement level, and the business has a lot to say for that, because a lot of practices have been taking place for a long time. There was also a call for having a one rule book, a very clear message in that sense, but also the need to tell the difference between those who follow the rules and those who do not follow the rules. Because yes, we have the leverage of the whole European society as the Commission set it up, but at the same time, we need to make sure that legislation can be implementable, and enforcement, and again, creates a level playing field. We had a second session on better wage system, which says clearly there is a need for a common approach with responsible business practices and collective bargaining and the highlight. And there is a cooperation needed, not on national level, but a regional level, so multi-national level. And in a post-COVID recovery time, there is no time for free riders. Again, we heard the same point in that sense. Clearly, there was a welcome to put such a priority in the agenda, as these elements are clearly important. We also heard the manufacturing, which was somehow optimist and skeptics at the same time, saying legislation will create overheads, so red tape. That it's always the risk of unintended consequences of legislation. We heard legislation should give a push to bring the others lagging behind to bring a systemic change in place. And that's basically the key elements. We also heard about the progress made by ACT, the milestones set for labor legislation needed, and also the importance for transparency in the value chain. Also, many of us enjoyed the session off the records where comments really stressed the importance of online cooperation across the stakeholders. Then we jump into the third priority, circular systems. One of the most thick in terms of keywords used. Circularity is clearly happening, but slow. It has a cost, and it's still expensive and very complex. We heard priorities set up by various players. There is a need to have fashion product to be used more, to be made again, and to have safe materials, safe and sustainable materials as key inputs. The Commission presented an ample consultation where the stakeholders have the opportunity of say what do they want, how to address the needs of the business. It was also important the role of skills and training people in an aging workforce, both to train people to comply with new circularity skill needs, but also to keep the knowledge of the aging workforce, which is leaving the companies and creates a big problem for the industry. We need to harmonize definition, starting from what is a circular product, what is recyclable, we need to look at the we need to start looking at the design phase, which is where everything starts. And we need harmonized legislation. And also we need investments for making textile waste a resource, a point on which EURATEX fully believe, and also believe on the value of recycling hubs initiative all over Europe. We were also reminded that Europe is not an island. The last two sessions address the next one on smart material choice. There is a clear need to make sustainable materials the norm. We were also informed of what a big bang will come by the end of the year, with so many initiatives being on the finalization from the Commission side. The importance of the cost of the fibers and stimulating a demand was highlighted. And in the final session, we look at collective action to increase the efficiency of resource, or reduce the consumption of water, chemicals, and materials all over the value chain. Stressing that sustainability is not a main driver yet in many parts of the world. We heard about also action in India and all the way in the US, and they need a push. So in conclusion, there is clearly a role for the policymakers to play in helping a transformation which is happening. The business sector is far from reacting negatively to this push to the extent that it's manageable. There is a call for support this transition, to have harmonized tools and mechanisms, to listen to the lessons learned from the business, to be careful on the impact on the small and medium-sized enterprises, and finally, to have everyone respecting the rules, because Europe is indeed not an island and we need level playing field. And with that, I will stop here, and I just pass it over to Holly for drawing her conclusion from today's discussion. Holly, please.
Thank you so much, Mauro, for such an excellent summary of what we heard today. My name's Holly Syrett, and I'm the Senior Sustainability Manager at Global Fashion Agenda. And hearing these conversations about the willingness to act, the need for alignment, and the need for understanding of where the greatest impacts can be achieved really speak to the heart of why we and created a long-lasting framework for the Fashion CEO agenda this year. It's intended to be a framework that won't change for the foreseeable future, to provide the industry and its most important stakeholders with an idea of where to prioritize sustainability action for prosperity, not only for people, but also for planet and business as well. Last week, we kicked off the launch of the Fashion CEO agenda, and we started with 2 media masterclasses. These are closed-door sessions specifically for journalists to create a safe environment to talk more about the complexities of the fashion industry and how we need to change it together. Our intent of hosting these masterclasses are really to help educate journalists and create more informed articles that will mobilize bold action amongst our different stakeholders and also consumers too. 2 days after the media masterclasses, we had our industry event, which was targeted at fashion leaders and fashion leaders throughout the value cycle as well. We presented the framework and we talked about the role of leadership in creating prosperity. We talked about financing prosperity throughout the fashion value cycle and the definition of what prosperity is in the first place, how that changes from different regions around the world, but also how that changes through different value chain perspectives. Commonalities, what we've seen across those different events and what we've been discussing with you today is really this recognition of urgency, the industry's commitment to change, and also recognition from our key stakeholders, such as the financial community and policymakers, for helping us and then taking responsibility to help enable the actions that are needed. Of course, these launch events are just a starting point for our work together, and we look forward to working with you over the next few days, weeks, months, and years on these priority actions, on determining how we can present progress that the industry has been making, how we can really focus efforts on action, and how we can hold ourselves accountable to moving forward on these priority areas. With that, I would like to extend an invitation to one of our next upcoming events, which will see gaps and opportunities, but specifically dive deeper into circularity. The event is taking place on the 16th of June from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central European Time, and that's 2 to 4 p.m. Bangladesh Standard Time. I say Bangladesh because the event will focus on the circular fashion in Bangladesh, what the opportunities are to scale circularity in production countries, and what that means at a policy level within a country such as Bangladesh, but also for international regulation and how we can collaborate. So we look forward to seeing you there. But first, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Maria Luisa Martinez Diez. She's our Senior Public Affairs Manager and is also really the lead for today's event. So thank you, and handing over to Maria Luisa.
To you, Holly, and thanks so much to all of you speakers and participants for your great inputs throughout this great 5 policy sessions. Everything will be available shortly in our YouTube channel, so you will be able to rewatch. But yeah, thank you, because theoretically we could have had 5 events of 2 hours each, right? This is to say that this is just really the starting point of a bigger journey. And we are really keen to help facilitate close dialogue between the industry, policymakers, and other important stakeholders. Discussions have shown that the industry is acting towards more sustainable practice on many different fronts. There is a clear appetite to strengthen dialogue with the political level. And even though the industry does not have all the answers at this stage, CEOs are starting to put sustainability high on their agenda, allocating more resources. And it is really at this stage that the political impulse really needs to follow, because only that can help drive change at scale and bring on board industry actors who have not yet started their sustainability journey. GFA's mobilization and convening efforts will therefore continue down that track. So in the upcoming months, we will be diving deeper and engaging further with policymakers, in particular at the EU level, given all the upcoming initiatives impacting textiles that have been announced by the European Commission. And because we are also conscious of how important it is that the industry speaks with one voice, GFA has joined forces with the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, SAC, the Federation of the European Sporting Goods Industry, FESI, Textile Exchange, and CDHC to align positions. We do this through the Policy Hub, Circularity for Apparel and Footwear, which we set up 2 years ago. Together, we 5 organizations represent the views of more than 500 retailers, brands, manufacturers, and other stakeholders. And amongst our forthcoming activities is the contribution with one voice to the ongoing consultation on the textile strategy. We also have ongoing position papers on waste, on EPR, to only name a few. And I encourage all of you to take a look at our website, policyhub.org, to find all the work that we are doing. So all in all, much more to come, because as put by Commissioner Sienkiewicz back at an event we organized last year, only by working together can we ensure that the textiles industry comes out more resilient from the COVID-19 crisis. Now is the time to set foot on the path to sustainable textiles. So thank you so much for today, and see you again soon. If not before, then for sure on the 7th and 8th of October, because then we will organize CFS Plus again, the digital version of Copenhagen Fashion Summit, where you can expect, amongst many other things, more discussions between the industry and policymakers about the fashion CEO agenda priorities, and of course in relation to the EU textile strategy that should be published more or less around that same time of the year. It is my pleasure to close this important event with a teaser of that next big one. And in the meantime, please save the date and see you all there.